So I have known about Clue for a while now, but it honestly wasn't until prepping for this episode that I really sat with how long it actually took me to understand my own cycle and how much I wasn't taught when I was about to get my period. And I didn't really grew up talking about this so much, even though I was in a big family with three sisters and like very open parents. We had a lot of conversations, but my cycle was something that I really didn't fully understand until being introduced to Clue. So this convo is just so important because it's something I know I'm about to learn so much information that I wish I knew as a younger woman, but so important for so many women out there to hear right now. And I have been seeing it so much, cycle tracking and how our cycles affect our moods and what we should be doing per month and all this stuff. And so now I'm just excited to have this one-on-one conversation with you, an expert on it. So before we get into all that stuff, I guess can you share a little bit about your background and what led you to create something as impactful as Clue?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
So my first sort of spark and my way into this whole field was this question of why has there been no innovation in family planning methods since
Mhm.
the pill came out in the 50s? I was like, wow, we have put people on the moon since then, invented the internet and so many other things. And I really wanted to be able to take out my phones and my phone and it should tell me, can I get pregnant today? Yeah,
Completely.
I think that'd be cool.
Yeah,
You know,
everything else has been invented.
right?
Yes.
And I had been in relationships since I was a teenager, and this I was then in my late 20s. So it was so many years of like trying the pill that didn't work well for me,
Mhm.
many years of condoms. I was just like, I just want to know. So this was really the beginning. And honestly, that question also kind of made me a little bit like, wait, what? Like, how can this not have been a super important thing for human mankind to
Completely.
help women with, right?
Completely,
Like,
completely. And when we start to even be sexually active, when we go to the doctor, why is the first thing that they do is try to like immediately medicate and go on birth control? And I remember having a similar experience to you. I hated birth control. I remember trying a bunch of different types. It affected my mood, it affected my energy. I was so down, but it kept on being like, well, what kind can we switch you to as opposed to let's maybe try tracking your period and seeing how you can handle this naturally. Like that was never an option for me. So you found that there was this need. There hadn't been something invented since the 50s. And you had this aha moment. And then what?
yeah, then what? I had graduated from this really creative business school, which
Hmm.
was more like a social entrepreneurship school that had kind of taught us this mindset of like, you can create change and you can
Hmm.
create a career and you can do something that's good for your users and you and the planet. So I was just like, here we go. I had
Totally.
no idea what was ahead. So it actually started with me putting a post-it note on my bedroom wall of my small flat in Copenhagen.
Hmm.
By the way, I had no smartphone and I had no money to buy a smartphone either. But I had this idea of like, I'll just put my name on a post-it note and write Ida Vision Holder. And then this sort of imaginary team around it of people that I had maybe met that could maybe help in some way. And then, like any startup journey, you just take like the first little step and then you meet somebody who helps you with this idea. And then, one thing led to the next. And I think you just try to like learn along the way.
Completely.
And then, well, a decade later, who got FDA clearance as the world's first 100% data driven type of birth control? But I mean, in that 10 years, I mean, so many things happened.
Of course, of course. The journey of a founder is so many twists and turns and everything. But I love what you did. I love that it just came from a simple post-it note and it just comes from conversations and like one thing leading to another. I think that so many people think that they need to have this like full idea, like completely thought out in a deck and start pitching it. And like it doesn't necessarily have to happen that way. Like you can have an idea and and have the patience to like see how it evolves, and then something really organic and amazing can come from that. Um, so like for me, period tracking honestly was never a thing. Like I never even did it. I would just be like, it's here. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't a thing. And honestly, even when I was like starting to think about having kids with my husband, I was really lucky. Like I went off my birth control and then within 2 months I was pregnant. So it never had to be this kind of thing where I had to track until some fertility stuff obviously came into play as I got a little bit older. But it never really felt like for me scientific until I started using Clue. I feel like you have been called the mother of femtech, by the way, which is completely iconic. But what was the actual moment where you thought, like this specific idea needs to exist? Like when you would put up the post-it, you had started having conversations, and what was that moment where, or rather, like what did Clue look like when it first launched?
So my idea was actually I wanted to measure hormones in saliva. I wanted to build this little device that could speak to a smartphone, and you would take it, saliva test and stick it into some reader, and 15 seconds later the phone would be like, green, today you cannot get pregnant or
Yeah.
whatever. Or the other way if you wanted to try, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, and my co-founder, he said, well, we should start by building a peer tracking app. So we kind of start understanding this space because hardware is hard and it takes a long time. And that was very smart because we tried to build this hardware for 4 years and it didn't work.
Hmm.
So, but we were building the period tracking app. And what we learned was that when you collect data on women's cycles, you can actually help people with all kind of things. You can
Hmm.
help them not get pregnant, maybe you can help them get pregnant, but you can also help them understand how this whole cycle works,
Completely.
um, which is related to our sexuality and our mental health and our energy levels and our how we build muscles and all kind of really interesting things. So it was a kind of a we were kind of a two-headed monster for a while trying to do both, and then over time learning that really there is so much power
Hmm.
and information and kind of opportunity in data.
Hmm.
uh, yeah, and along the way also being approached by a lot of scientists who were like, super excited because there had never been a data set of this magnitude about
Completely.
women's before, and a data set that was really diverse, not just white college students in America, but actually a global data set. So our own understanding of what we were building kept
Kept
evolving and
evolving.
still
Hmm.
is.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's so true, just because there's so much of women's health that still hasn't been uncovered. How did you feel like you got people starting to think of period tracking as a wellness tool as opposed to just like a monthly chore, as opposed to those that are using it for pregnancy and whatnot? Like
Yeah.
how are we really using it as a wellness tool?
I think deep in my heart, I felt women can only participate really fully in society if they feel well in their bodies.
Hmm.
And, and it's a help to feel well if you understand what's going on. Because I think a lot of us can have a lot of sort of, questions. Am I normal? Am I healthy? What's going on?
Hmm.
And then when it's almost like a navigation, as you start being able to read the signs of your body, you understand what's going on and you can better navigate your life through this, non-linear way that our bodies have made us. We
Completely.
are cyclical. Um, and I think this understanding that if we can live well with our cycles, we will live better in our bodies, and then we can actually live better, like across the board. And then it's not about, it's like, this chore, but rather this, wow, this is a really interesting data set, and it's really enabling my life, my health journey. And I also think of it a little bit as almost like a life insurance. If you have
Hmm.
longitude data on your health,
Hmm.
you can also see if something starts being like, wait, this is weird.
Hmm.
Like, this is
Hmm.
what's going on. And you can go and get help, and you can show the data and be like, no, no. And we know from so many stories that when people can show the data, the doctors will be like, oh, yeah, you really are bleeding a lot. Or,
Completely.
oh, wow, it's
Completely.
helpful.
It's so important for me. It's like I rely on it even when I feel like that week or so before my period and I'm starting to get moody and I'm not 100% sure if my period is coming. And just the fact that I can see where I'm at in my cycle and if emotions are a little bit more sensitive at this time, and I can honor that and maybe be easier on myself. Or I know there's moments where there's times to like really go for it and exert physical energy, and other times to like let yourself relax and really
Yeah.
take care of yourself. Do you mind like just walking us through the cycle a little bit and how the app helps us through the cycle?
First, I think it's important to say that everybody feel quite different things.
Mhm.
It changes throughout our life. It's one of the reasons why it's helpful to track, because we can't ever quite figure out our body. Then suddenly, we choose to get pregnant and then something is happening. So, but generally, you would say that people tend to be more energetic when they ovulate and
Mhm.
maybe also have a sex drive.
Mhm.
And then the time before your period is often a little bit more sensitive, as you say, a little more, it can be depressive, or some people get a little more aggressive.
Mhm.
Some people say that our hormonal kind of pattern looks more like men's in that phase. We're a little more like direct.
Direct? Uh-huh. I'm feeling like I'm in that zone right now of my
Yeah.
cycle.
And, I really think that there's a lot of intelligence in each of these ways of being in the world.
Mhm.
Usually we are quite sharp also when we are like, it's like it doesn't, it's not untrue what comes out. It might come out a little bit sharply,
But it's
but
still our truth, right? I mean, and we're so multifaceted. But, when you talk about tracking and putting in personal data, which for me, I didn't feel overwhelmed by putting in the personal data. Like there wasn't that much. And I've always felt like it's super user friendly. But I know that there's a lot of fear out there about people inputting their personal data, like especially cycle data, given, where we are at in this world with politics and the control that women have over our bodies or lack of control. But I know that Clue leads with ethics, and I know that this has always been really important to Clue. Can you talk to me about, what you guys are doing to protect us and honor that?
I mean, it's just so deeply in me that of course you have to honor people's trust, because without people's trust, why would anybody use your product? And
Completely.
it's like it's the basis of even being able to exist, and it's the right thing to do. One of the benefits of being based out of Europe and out of Berlin is that we are under European data protection regulation,
Hmm.
and it's the strictest in the world. And Berlin is particularly strict. With Germany's history, anything around data is taken very seriously. So it's like we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
We have, and that's good. We think it's the right thing to do, and we are happy to live in a regulated market. And everybody's data, no matter where you use the app, is based and stored and treated under European regulation.
Got it.
It's really important to say. I one of the sort of thoughts I've had around this whole data privacy thing is that it's not just what founders choose to do, it's also what pressure they're under from their investors
So
and
true.
the market, right? And I
Hmm.
feel it's really important that we say it should not be rewarded to get growth at all costs, because of course people violate these privacy concerns because it gives them profit and growth.
Hmm.
And we have, I guess, been careful and lucky to choose investors who share our, you know, value set around this and say, no, it has to be the winning strategy and the right thing to do. And
Completely.
people will keep caring about data privacy, which, by the way, was not a given 10 years ago. It was a bit like, oh, everybody knows everything anyway. Who's going to
Right.
care?
Right.
We chose the way of like, no, like it's important. And now the regulation has gone that way too,
Hmm.
thankfully.
Hmm.
But it cannot, we live in a kind of tech system where it has been rewarded to get growth at all costs, at the cost of users' privacy. And I think that is really problematic. Like that's the big systemic issue
Issue.
here,
Hmm.
because there will be founders who are willing to, play along with that. And
Hmm.
so the founders have to be ethical, but the investors also have to agree that you then value when people are
Right.
honoring
Right.
privacy.
It feels like a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain for the company. And I think like the ethics of the company or your company specifically are so they're so powerful. Like I would never have known that had I not spoken to you. And I think that says so much about a company. What would you say to someone worried that their data might be used against them?
I mean, first of all, it's kind of heartbreaking that that could even be a question that we sit with.
I
And I
know.
don't think it's unreasonable. I think people are smart. You know, women are smart. They don't want to get into trouble. I would say if you cannot figure out where a company is based,
Mhm.
that's like a warning
Number
sign. If
one.
you don't understand what the business model is,
Mhm.
that's a warning sign.
Mhm.
One thing that has also been really important to me building Clue was that we have to have a business model that people can understand. It has to be transparent
Mhm.
because if people don't understand how you make money, it's usually because users would be uncomfortable if they knew I might be selling the data or something else. So this transparency, I think, is another really good indicator of who should I trust with this data. Like,
Mhm.
do I understand who they are? What are they doing with my data? How do they make money? Where did they come from?
Right.
Which market are they regulated in? Um, but one thing I think is really important to say is that data is amazing. We should not give up collecting data
Mhm.
because it will help us, it will keep us healthy, it will drive research and science, and we need that. We cannot give it up because some people are bad actors. Then we lose twice, you
No, it's
know?
so true. It's so true. That would be such a shame. I mean, for me to be able to track my cycle and look at the past 3 years or 4 years, I think I've been using Clue. There's something just like so calming about having all my information there and knowing that I can turn back to it and really understand myself when I feel like so many other things are out of touch, and I can see and feel and do certain things to make myself feel better, but a lot of I don't know what's going on inside of me, and this is like a way for me to really get in touch with that. So it's so important to be tracking that. Um, so back to like the period itself, it honestly like took me until my 30s to realize that the cycle affects everything that we were talking about, like our skin, my energy, my health, like my sleep, my appetite. And I feel like once I started tracking, it gave me the power to also not be so hard on myself or like confused about where I was at. It was more just like, yeah, this is just my body doing its thing now, you know? So what do you think most people may misunderstand about their cycle, and what shifts when we actually start paying attention?
Think even just understanding the basic biology, I think a lot of people think that there's only the period going on, and that
Right.
is the cycle. But of course, the period is the beginning of the cycle, and then you have these hormonal shifts that make an egg be released, and if it's fertilized, you are obviously becoming pregnant. But if not, the lining of the uterus fills up and eventually comes out as your next period. And in between, you have more hormonal shifts, and it influence our social patterns, how our vision work, how we build muscle tissue, our vocal cords. I mean, for so many different things. And it's a fascinating, miraculous system. So many things have to work together. Our different hormonal glands, our reproductive systems, our brain. And I mean, I think there can be this appreciation of like, wow, like this body, it's just incredible.
It's doing
And also
so
like
much.
and some people suggest that we should have menstruation as a vital sign, on the same level as heart beating and breathing. Like
Mm,
if you don't menstruate, it's a sign that you should go figure out what's going on. Maybe you have a
completely.
hormone imbalance, maybe you're pregnant, maybe something else.
Mhm.
So again, it feels like this navigation. I can say now I'm 46, so I'm going through menopause. I
Okay.
think,
You
it's like
think you're in perimenopause maybe.
perimenopause.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's like this sense of like this navigation I've had in my life for so long, I'm like lost. I'm like, what's going on? It's really interesting. Because what you say is like usually you would know like, oh, okay, I'm feeling a bit like this, that way. Oh, okay, it kind of makes sense with where I am in my cycle. And now it's
Uh-huh.
like, okay, wait, what?
Like there's no anchor to base
There's
any
no
of the
anchor.
feelings on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. But on the flip side, that really tells me how much it was a navigation. while I had my regular periods.
How much you
Um,
were able to make sense of what was going on with your body when you had it. Yeah, that makes sense. So, what would you say to someone who's never tracked it before but curious to start?
well, first I would say, lead with curiosity. It should not be this chore.
Mhm.
Like, try for a few months, see if it makes you curious about learning even more. There's a lot of informational content to be found in apps, and in food there's definitely a lot is really, really scientifically super solid and fact checked and medically like solid. Um, and I would also say, to your point, choose one that you can really trust.
Mhm.
And it's not only about the data privacy. For me, there's also something about when we build technology, we shape culture,
Mhm.
and we teach people what is to be considered normal, what is outside a cultural norm, maybe. And I think I feel that there's so much responsibility on the shoulders of the ones building tech to make sure that it's inclusive, that people feel at home, that it's not
Mhm.
fear producing, that you
Mhm.
don't feel like you're wrong or something is embarrassing. And so, like, if your technology doesn't feel like it's empowering, find something else. Like, it should feel like it's your best ally.
Mhm.
It's like
Mhm.
it's got your back, and it be sensitive to where you are. Like, I want technology to be built with emotional intelligence.
Mhm. Mhm.
It cannot feel like it's like shovel me into some gender normative like box.
Box,
What?
right, completely. Where we're all working the same. No, I think that that's so important. I honestly didn't realize until recently that every time I log something into Clue that it's not only helping me like we were talking about, it's obviously helping like the bigger picture of research that hasn't historically included women. Is there anything that has been surprising or meaningful that's come out of some of Clue's research partnerships?
Yes. I mean, for me, it's almost like this physical sensation of when people enter a data point, they're like pushing female health research forward. Like,
Completely.
it's like
Completely.
it's actually feeding that whole big movement. And
Mhm.
Clue has done partnership with so many incredible researchers at, Stanford and Columbia and Oxford, like amazing institutions. And people come with so many great questions, the researchers, like, is there a connection between air pollution and our cycle?
Mhm.
Turns out we did this together with MIT, and it's been a long study, and they just came out with the results. And it's like, yeah, it does affect it.
Oh,
It's like,
great.
oh, but now we can show it, right? Or we did a research project with somebody at Stanford, and she was like looking at really young women's bleeding patterns. Turns out a lot of really young girls, they bleed a lot, like too much. They're really heavy bleeding. Like,
Mhm.
it's like they need help with that.
I remember my first couple periods being super, super heavy. I don't know if you remember your first period, but I remember my first period like it was yesterday. And actually, I was wearing white jeans, and I'm wearing white jeans today. I was wearing white jeans. I remember being at an auction in with my family on vacation. I felt like I had the flu. Like I felt so
Yeah.
ill. It was probably the heaviest period I ever had. And I'm gonna ask you about your first period too. Don't worry, you're not being spared from this. Um, but yes, okay. So they were finding that teenagers were having extremely, extremely heavy
Um,
periods. Yeah,
yeah.
to begin with, which is not normal.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, you have to imagine that researchers before, they had so small data sets. They could maybe go and ask, a few hundred or maybe a few thousand if it was, really big study about something for a period of time.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now we have 30 billion data points about the women's cycle from 190 countries, all races, all ethnicities.
Hmm.
We have never had that before in the history of human mankind.
It's so amazing.
And it's really important because there are still so many things we don't understand. We
Completely.
don't know. Um, I mean, for instance, like in my own site, Suddenly I was bleeding for a month. I go to my gynecologist and she's like, take out your old copper IUD. And I was like, okay, but does that have anything to do with the bleeding? I've had it for 8 years. I never had this. And she was like, I'll just take it out. And I was like, ah. So 2 weeks later, I go back, I speak to a colleague in the same practice. I was like, what do you think? And she's like, well, you don't know if it really works anymore. I'm like, have you ever seen a 46-year-old woman get pregnant with an old copper IUD? And
Right.
she's like, no. I'm like, right. I don't have the data. And she's like, you know what? Just leave it in. I'm like, okay, what should I do? I don't know. It's like, wait and see.
It's so hard, and then you trust these doctors, and which you want to trust, of course,
Yeah.
but there's just very, very little
Yeah.
very, very little data on
They were
women.
not part of clinical trials for
Yes.
medication because they have hormonal cycles, which messes up the data. I mean, you understand why they would say that because it is complicated. But I think that we're going into this really exciting time where we will start having much more data on hormones.
Mhm.
I think that's going to inform us in so many ways. I'm very excited about where that whole
Where we're
field
all
is
headed.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to end with just like a few thoughtful, zoomed out questions. What's one thing you wish more people knew about their cycle?
One thing I wish they knew,
Mm-hmm.
I think if I were to say one thing, I would say we are not linear.
Mm-hmm.
We are cyclical and we go up and down in different things. And that's a superpower. I really think it's a superpower. But our society doesn't fit with how society works.
Mm-hmm. Our society sometimes wants us to just be like this.
Exactly. So I think there is some sort of like, how do we kind of liberate ourselves a little bit out of that idea
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
make space in our world for the life experience that we actually have? And I think a big first thing is that we have to tell the world, what does it feel like to live in this female body?
Mm-hmm.
How do we tell people in a really inclusive and kind of gentle way so that they can not feel that we are like, oh, you have no idea because you never had a period, but like, wow, like tell me more and can help us create lives and work lives that actually works for our bodies. I think
Completely.
that's so healthy. And by the way, I think when we learn to do that as a culture, we are also learning to take care of the planet because it's kind of the same process. How do we actually feel and understand how the planet works and kind of take care of it, like actually respond to it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It
You
feels like
know?
right. It's so important. I have an almost 8-year-old son, and I've explained to him what the period is, and like I think that it's in a way that he can understand it. Obviously, our puppy just had her first period this week, and she's been running around with a diaper on, and so it's been like part of the conversation. And I think that like having these conversations and you know normalizing it young so it's not an ew gross thing or girls get this or what is this, like obviously the conversation's so much larger than that, but there is a part that we can play in terms of talking to our children about it as well, and our male children, for like most importantly.
Yes.
um
Okay. Good
what
job.
Yeah, trying. What would you say is your hope for the next generation of femtech?
Well, other than being well regulated and well funded,
Yeah.
well, I think technology that helps us look deeper into the body is really
Hmm.
exciting. Um, the hormonal data, I think, is super crucial, and we don't yet have hormonal data that is continuous. I
Hmm.
think that would be really great. I would also love if all the different data sets that we are producing, sorry, period tracking app, our running app, our sleeping app, like if they could start working together and we could build
Hmm.
this more full pictures of our health, because I think that would help us navigate. Almost imagine like a landscape painting, and we'd be like, oh, if we go this way, this is my risk factor for this and this, and if I
Hmm.
choose this other path, this could happen. Um, yeah, I'd love this sort of integration and really making the data in a way actionable
Hmm.
for people.
That makes so much sense. I was just thinking as you were saying that, obviously, you've been tracking periods, but then for women who are going through perimenopause or about to enter menopause, does Clue cover that as well? Do you start tracking all your hormones and everything? Because there's obviously such a need for the unknown there as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the whole space. I think many people feel like totally sort of, what's happening and how
Right.
should I take hormones? I'm not, like so many questions. Clue it has a mode where it says perimenopause or
Uh-huh.
menopause. It tracks specific things related to that.
Okay.
I don't think we are done. I think there is more data we could pull in to make more sense of it for users. There's probably more research that could, be communicated to users, and definitely
Completely.
more research that could be done.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always this work in process, and of course, very important also to hear what people need and what they ask for. But Clue does have like
Have that.
I'm making my own cycle, non-existing cycle, weird
Yeah.
cycle.
You're
um, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, here are some fun few quick ones just to take the pressure off a little bit. Okay, first period story in one word.
Shopping basket with my mom.
Emergency trip to the toilet in the grocery store. Okay, favorite ritual in your cycle.
My favorite ritual.
Well, I guess your cycle is changing at the moment. Did you ever have a
Yeah,
ritual, or
it is.
was there anything that made you feel more centered during that time that you remember, or
Honestly, I really like my like estrogen spikes and the kind of the sexual drive that comes with that. And
yeah.
that's always a good
Yeah.
time of the month.
So you just honor that. I love it. Okay. Did you ever have like a period craving that you couldn't resist?
Mm, I could definitely recognize that there are phases where I was more like, oh, sugar, and
Mhm.
one was less so.
Mhm. Mhm.
I didn't have cravings like I had when I was pregnant, where I was just like, give me some sort of citrus fruit.
Yes, exactly.
I must. Yeah.
The amount of peaches I would eat in a day and tangerines and I know all the acid you needed. Okay. Um the moment you feel most connected to your body.
Oh, what a nice question. Mm. I mean, it's probably after good sex, I
Yeah.
think. But
I
I
know.
mean,
But it's very
I think
cathartic.
it's really, I think you probably have this too in your life, but definitely in my life as a founder, you run so fast and
Mhm.
you're very often in these sort of, intense situations.
Mhm.
So the ability to really relax is actually, I would say, diminished. It's really hard to deeply relax.
Mhm.
It's like a learning journey I'm on.
Mhm.
And the moments where for some reason I managed to go to this really deeply relaxed state, that's probably when I feel most connected to my body.
Yeah. I feel like as I'm getting a little older too, I'm able to relax a little bit more. It's probably just because I'm more tired as well, but like really, really fully relax. And then also, just like on the sex note, was talking about this with my girlfriends the other day, but for like the past 2 years, like every single time after sex, I cry. Like it's like a hormonal release. It's not obviously like a sadness or it's nothing bad. It's like, oh my God, I'm so happy, or like like what a relief kind of a thing. That
Yeah.
feels totally normal to you, right?
Yeah, no, I cry sometimes too. And I think, I mean, we can do a whole podcast on crying. I
I
think it's a brilliant like function that our body
I
has.
do too.
But
You need to tell my husband that though.
yeah, well, maybe
Yeah.
he try some more.
Maybe
I
he
don't
needs a good cry.
know. No,
um,
I think it's just remarkable how the body have these expressions in different
completely.
ways, and the intelligence that our body holds is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, completely. An app you love besides Clue.
Hmm. Well, I'm a very faithful user of my diary app. Use that for many, many years.
Uh-huh.
Keep diary every day. But other than that, I have like a news aggregator app. and you get to set your own kind of themes. And I do read a little bit of news, but I love the science news because they are always so optimistic and inspiring.
Yeah.
I love this. And I have like my art section and my whatever.
Uh-huh.
But it brings me kind of the world
Yes.
in a way that I like. Yeah.
That's
And
amazing.
I mean, and of course, I'm dependent on all the productivity app that we are all dependent on.
On all of it. I know, but they may not necessarily be your favorite. I'm dependent on a lot
Not my
too, but
favorite,
they're
but I'm
not my
not a big
favorite.
social media person. I'm not actually on social media. I'm on LinkedIn. Other than that, I'm not anywhere.
Hmm. But that's important to know. Like as a founder, I think some founders think it's very important for themselves to put themselves out there and have a social media account and really market themselves. And you didn't have to and don't have to, and you let the app speak for itself. And I think there's a lot of power in that.
I think as a leader, one of the most underrated things to do is to actually think.
Hmm.
Like when in the day do you have time to actually deeply think? And
Rare.
this constant flow and busyness is definitely exciting and addictive, but it's not necessarily so helpful, I think, for
I
me, my system.
I agree. I agree. I feel like I'm learning that though as I'm getting older. I think sometimes that comes with like a little bit of perspective.
Mhm.
Um, but okay, last question. Something that should be required reading for every girl at 13.
Oh, yes. There is a book. I wonder if it's actually right here. It's called, um, I mean, there are probably different ones, but a book that tells you like about your body.
Yeah.
Like, what does the ovary actually do? Why do we have breasts? What, like, how does that work? How do they make milk? Where does the clitoris sit? And how is it actually connected to your brain? And
Hmm.
like all this, like just understanding like the basics of the actual body. I
Hmm.
think that's super inspiring and empowering.
I think so
Yeah.
too. And I think that the girls, they start to learn that in class, but it's not necessarily the set or setting for that conversation. So
Mm,
think something like a book where it can be relatable and taught to them in a way that they can absorb it is super
yeah.
important. It's hard when it's coming from the schools, and they're sitting in class with other boys, and then it's like it's yeah, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this and with the timing and how far you are. I have my sister told me about Clue probably 6 years ago, and it's such a nice thing for me to have. It is actually one of the apps that is productive for me, that like gives back as opposed to takes away.
Mhm.
And I'm just really grateful for it. And through all my fertility stuff, just having that to show to my doctors and really have like that knowledge, it's been amazing for me. So when I heard that we were chatting, I was so excited to talk to you.
Well, thank you so much. And I mean, without users, there would be no Clue. It all begins and ends with the users. So
Totally.
thank you
Of course.
for
Well,
giving
thank
back.
you for coming. Everybody, check out Clue. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.